What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Black Professional Project. My name is Kenton Hipsher. I am the CEO and founder of the nonprofit. And once again, our mission is to educate and inspire Black and Brown youth through the careers of Black and Brown professionals. And we hope to motivate you guys and show you what's really out there and available to you through stories like the one that you will hear today. So with us, I'd like to introduce our Black professional for today, which is Mr. Rustin Smith.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Happy to be here. Like I said, I talked to you earlier, and this is the positive thing that you're doing. As a youngster, I really would have appreciated this type of message and direction for myself.
Certainly, I would have too. I know I was wandering a little bit there towards the end of my high school career, just trying to figure out, like, am I going to be a doctor or what am I going to do? So let's get it started here. Would you like to share with them, what your profession is and what industry you work in?
Okay. My actual title is the National Application Specialist for Microbiology. I work for a medical device company called Beckton Dickinson, BD. They're pretty much all over the hospital realm. If you've gone to the hospital and had your blood drawn into the tubes, there probably were tubes produced by the company. We're also part of the diagnostic division and laboratories. So I work with microbiology laboratories. When they purchase my company's instruments, I go in and train them on how to use it. So in the case of, you might have heard of something called sepsis, which is a bacterial infection of the blood. I train the lab staff on how to, draw the blood properly. And when they place the bottle that the blood is collected into the instrument, there's an instrument that flags it as positive, and we have another instrument that will tell the hospital or the doctor or the nurse what type of organism is growing, what type of bacteria it is, and then how to kill it. What antibiotic will be effective in treating the patient. So that's more like the microbiology realm. You might hear molecular as well. We're in that space as well, especially now with COVID happening. You hear terms like PCR and amplification. So we have instruments that will test patients that are positive for COVID using DNA. You hear things like antigen testing, antibody testing, DNA testing. One of the platforms that we use is for molecular DNA testing. And so my role as an application specialist, and you hear that term a lot out there in the market. For me, I deal with microbiology platforms, but you hear application specialists for people who are IT. You might hear application specialists for people who are radiation therapists, who are nurses. And basically what that entails is you've worked in, maybe as a nurse, maybe as a scientist, maybe as another allied health field or IT field, and you've used your knowledge that you've gained working at a hospital or whatever company you're at, and now you're taking that knowledge and now you're working for the industry. You're training people on how they use the equipment that they use. So for me, that's laboratory equipment, but for IT, that may be some type of software equipment. For a nurse, that may be some type of equipment that they use, or radiation therapists for oncology or cancer. So for my role, there's certain levels depending on what company you're at. The application specialist, or senior application specialist, and then someone like me who's a national role. There's one of me that covers pretty much the entire country. And I'll handle any complex implementations. I'll talk to PhDs, maybe on a technical level when it comes to microbiology. Maybe they have some really technical questions concerning antimicrobial susceptibility testing or resistant markers, genetic anomalies. So I'll talk to them about that, or any type of high-level troubleshooting is what I pretty much will handle.
Gotcha. So you have a lot of a lot of products to cover, a lot of roles, a lot of clients, but you manage those very well, and that's what makes you a professional in your role. One of the things I know a lot of people probably want to ask is, how did you get started into this field? Because it's not something growing up that people go, I'm going to be an application scientist.
Exactly. I didn't even know about it. Actually, I stumbled across it. Like I didn't even know this existed. But the way I started was, I always knew as a youngster that I was interested in science. I kind of went back and forth. Okay, do I want to do strictly science, or do I want to go to med school, be a doctor? I found out pretty quickly that going the whole doctor route wasn't for me. I didn't really want to, touch sick people and interact with sick people. I'm kind of an introvert. I'm kind of like a solitary type person. So kind of laboratory kind of really attracted me. And when I was 18, I had this set goal of, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to graduate in 4 years. I'm going to go straight to grad school. I'm going to have my PhD by like 25, 26. I'm going to be a professor. I'm going to do research. Boom, boom, boom. I had it all lined up. But some things, life happens, and you find out that not everything goes the way you had planned. And you learn some things along the way. Like I did start, I majored in biology. And then probably in my sophomore year or junior year, I switched to something called clinical laboratory science. And clinical laboratory science is a degree. You might hear medical technologists as well. They're the folks that work in the hospital laboratory. So chemistry laboratory, hematology, blood bank, microbiology are pretty much the 4 core labs. And there's some specialty labs, virology or HLA, molecular. But those are the scientists that work in the hospital. So with COVID, with all the samples that are being collected, those samples are being sent to a laboratory, and the clinical laboratory scientists are the people behind the scenes that are actually testing it. So when you go to the hospital and you have your blood drawn, or you have a culture drawn, it's sent to the laboratory, and it's not magically, results are spit out. There's actually people, laboratory scientists, that are actually performing the test. So I went to school for that. And the reason I changed was because I knew I wanted to go to grad school, but I still wasn't sure. And I wanted to be able to have a job when I graduated from college, with undergrad. And just having a biology degree, I heard people say, well, it may be hard to get a job, or it's very competitive. You would be forced to go to grad school. But with this specialized degree, you quickly get a job at a hospital, which happened to me. But I did end up using another program called PrEP, which is a program that I just kind of stumbled across. And it was for minorities who were interested in getting a doctorate degree in a biomedical science. So I ended up applying to that program, and I got into University of Pennsylvania. I'm from Philadelphia, so it was perfect. It was at UPenn. It was an Ivy League school. I didn't have to move. So I started this program basically a week after I finished undergrad, and I lasted about 6 to 8 months, I think. Found out that the research that I ended up doing wasn't something that I was really interested in. I think I was doing like Kaposi sarcoma, HIV research, and the program was in its infancy. I was the part of the first class that program started. So I really didn't feel like it didn't really work out for me. So I ended up going back to the hospital. And then from there, I ended up working at Merck Pharmaceuticals. I was a laboratory supervisor working in a vaccine lab. And then I ended up moving to Maryland. I was at Merck for 5 years. And I got a job at a cosmetic company working in a microbiology lab. Always stuck with microbiology. And then LinkedIn is how I got connected to my job at BD. I've been there for 8 years now. Someone from the company, a recruiter, saw my resume on LinkedIn. They saw that I had a lot of clinical microbiology experience, and I had industrial micro experience from the cosmetic company I worked at, because we tested the shampoos and the lotions, and we tested the air and the machines that they use to manufacture. So I had kind of both worlds, industry and clinical. So they said, you would be a good fit for a call center, which I never thought of using my science skills to be at a call center. But when you think about it, when you work at a research lab or you work at a hospital, you have equipment, and sometimes things go wrong or you have technical questions. You call a company and someone on the other line speaks your same language. I was able to do that. Working in the call center, I did that for about a year. And what would happen was these application specialists, they would fly in sometimes to Baltimore, and they would train some of the people in-house. And I was like, they were really cool. They were senior people who had been with the company for a while. They had all these really cool stories about traveling and seeing different cities. And it just seemed like a job that I thought this is something that I really would be interested in. And then one of the application specialists who ended up training me, she called me one day and said that, hey, we have an opening in Ohio, and would you like to be a part of it? She said that, she was an African-American. She kind of reminded me of my mother. She's an older lady. She's passed away now. She's a good mentor of mine. But she thought I would always be a good fit for the role. And I said, yeah, I definitely want to do it. And I applied, and I got hired, and that's how I kind of fell into it. So basically it was social media, LinkedIn, putting my resume out there, someone reaching out to me, and I just kind of fell into it, and I've really enjoyed it. It is really a lifestyle too, because it requires a lot of traveling. It really fits my personality. I said I'm an introvert, so I'm not going to an office. I'm usually working from home or I'm traveling. So I have complete command of my schedule. When I have to train a customer, I kind of work with them to come up with a date that I need to go on site. I plan all my travel. I go. I book my hotels, my flights, and I pretty much have a independent type role when it comes to that. Now there's 15 or 16 of us across the nation, application specialists. So we get together once or twice a year and we have conference calls, but really you're kind of by yourself. And the people that you kind of interact with are your customers, the people in the laboratory that you see on a regular basis because you visit them through training, maybe troubleshooting, you follow up with them. So those are the kind of people you develop your relationships more so with than your coworkers. But it's definitely more of a lifestyle, like kind of like what a flight attendant would be, where you're not necessarily home all the time. You're out on the road. So you kind of have to be okay with that, understanding that if you're a family person, or you have kids, or you have a dog, sometimes you're away. For me, maybe 3 or 4 days out of the week, and it fluctuates. Sometimes I'm home all week. Sometimes I'm going Monday through Friday. Sometimes I'm going 2 days out of the week. But it definitely is something that if you like to travel, if you like to explore, you like trying different restaurants, and the company pays for it, it's definitely a job role for you. And like I said, if it's not the science area that you're interested in, they have this type of role for IT. They have it for other allied health fields and other areas that you may find interesting as well.
Wow. So, you're really kind of doing two jobs. You're doing the job that you have for the company, but then you're also like your own personal assistant, having to manage everything that goes on with your life in that process. So you have a lot of control, but it's also a lot of responsibility.
Definitely.
But, like you said, this wasn't your first job out of school. This is something that you really had to work towards and find your place at and earn this role. So
it is something that you need prior experience before you kind of jump into it. And when I go to hospitals, I'll have people come up to me and say, hey, how do I get into this? And I'll tell them, hey, this is what you need to focus on in the laboratory. This is what you should really study up on. These are the type of questions we'll ask of people when we're interviewing. Like, so if you're a new student, like work in the laboratory 3 years and then come back to me, reach out to me, and we'll see if we have an opening, we can hire you. But it's definitely a role that requires a little bit of experience first, and then you can jump into it because you need to be able to speak the language of the people you're interacting with. So when they say Staphylococcus aureus, MRSA, ESBL, CRE, you need to understand what those terminologies are when it comes to microbiology. Because you don't want to be standing there like a deer in headlights. You have to be able to kind of speak to it. Because you're also kind of a consultant as well. when you're seeing these laboratories, they're really good at what they do, but they're working in their laboratory. So you have the advantage of seeing things. For me, at a national level, I've been to many hospitals, so I can give my opinion. I can tell them, well, I've seen how this lab handles this type of specimen, or this is how they report out this type of antimicrobial, or this is how they do a cascade for their antimicrobials, from my experience of seeing how other people do it. So you are kind of a consultant too, as well.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you got to wear a lot of hats, and I feel like that's something that's common amongst any national title, because you have so many clients, and I'm sure there's people under you that you may also be, referred to as a reference or as a point of contact or information. So you really do have to know your job very well, and take it a step further and know where the industry is, where the field is. And it can be a lot, but I'm sure there's a lot of exciting parts about that. So what about your role wakes you up in the morning and tells you, like, I'm gonna get after it today, like I'm excited to tackle a new day?
Yeah, for me, the freedom, it's not a 9-to-5 type job. I'm the type of person where that doesn't fit my personality. Some people need stability and they need a set schedule of knowing what they're doing every day. For me, I like, and I'm a Sagittarius, so people say I like to be tied down, I like to travel. I kind of fit that stereotype where, I like the ability of one week is different from the other sometimes. Now, it's right now with COVID, my travel is kind of on hold, so I'm working from home a lot. But usually, what excites me is that it's different. Customers are different. When you're working for a company, there's always new technologies coming. There's always new R&D. And because I have a lot of field experience, sometimes I also partner with new projects that are happening, new technology that's happening, because I'm kind of the voice of the customer as well, because I interact with our customers so much. So I hear what things they're asking for and things they want to happen. So there's a lot of interaction with that as well. So it's not a boring job. It's not doing the same thing over and over. It's always changing. Technology is always changing. The field of microbiology is changing. Molecular platforms coming on. Organisms mutating and becoming more resistant. So it's always changing. And it's not boring.
That's really the great thing about the clinical field is there will always be something else to do. There's never going to be a time where, we just run out of diseases or we run out of bacteria.
Exactly. We're living it right now, right?
Exactly. This is a key example of the situation we're in right now. But I think the way you describe that is really good, because that variety will appeal to a lot of people. Because I know for me, moving into sales out of science, in technical science roles, sometimes you're kind of stuck doing the same thing for a very long time. Now, your problems that you run into will vary, of course, but you're kind of one band, one show, like that's what you're doing. But moving into sales, like you mentioned, I have to deal with customers all the time. Everybody's a new person. There's always a new desire or a new objection, and you just gotta, learn to roll with the punches and adapt. And that variety for me is very key to my success as well.
You definitely have to be able to adapt, because there's always changing. Even with travel, like, you think you're going to get home at a certain time, and then you fly to Chicago and there's a snowstorm. So you had a plan. Maybe it's a Friday night, right? You expected to be back Friday afternoon, and you had plans Friday night, and a storm happens, and now you're overnight, you're not coming home until Saturday, which it doesn't happen often, but little things like that, you should be able to adapt to customer schedules, to unforeseen events that happen as well. So if you have those type of characteristics, you'll make a great application specialist.
So in addition to, some of the travel woes that you have to go through, what are a couple other obstacles that you face in your career? Because I know, like, dealing with people, always an obstacle. Always going to be an obstacle.
Exactly. So troubleshooting is also an aspect of the job, but I actually enjoy troubleshooting. So problems come up, people get upset. So you have to be able to, talk professionally to people, especially when their instrument's not working. But you have to kind of see their side. Like they're providing a service to doctors to ensure patients get better. So if there's a problem with an instrument, you can see why they're upset because they have someone on their side upset with them. Just dealing with, because it is also a customer service business as well, because you're dealing with a customer, which is the laboratory, dealing with that. Other obstacles, I don't see it as an obstacle, but the field is always changing. So you always have to kind of stay on top of, things that are happening in the field, regulations. So you never stop learning, basically, right? It's not an obstacle, but some people might find it difficult. You have to, keep up with continuing education, go back to school, learn new techniques. So that's something that you would encounter as well. It's a personal obstacle for myself. I mean, I guess growing up, for me, I had like a lot of self-doubt, self-confidence, and probably not a lot of good direction. I grew up the only child, just my mother and me in Philadelphia. And me being kind of quiet, I wasn't really good at networking and putting myself out there. Which is why I think what you're doing is really great, because for a younger version of myself, this would have been great because I would have been able to see people like myself and other things that are out there besides being a doctor, besides being a lawyer, besides being an engineer, which are all great. But, there's other avenues out there that people can do that they just didn't know. And just believing in yourself and just reading and putting yourself out there and networking, I would say, is probably the biggest thing that you can do for yourself. One of the things that I didn't do early on in my career, but I find that, just ask questions. Don't be afraid to seek out people. Go use social media. I didn't have social media. I'm 37 years old. Social media wasn't big until, I guess, college or after college for me, but don't be afraid to use LinkedIn. I mean, that's how we met, on LinkedIn. Don't be afraid to use Instagram or Facebook, whatever your platform is, to reach out to people. For wherever you know, there's always a yes. There's always people willing to help someone out. So I know I will.
Yeah, that's key. I think networking is a big key in people's success, and it's not easy for anyone. I think a lot of people have this thought that if you're just a social butterfly, always talking to people kind of person, that networking is something that comes easy to you. But it's a challenge for everyone because you don't know who's on the other end. You don't know what their response is going to be. Hopefully hearing it from people, like you, it'll help provide some motivation and some confidence to these younger individuals to have the courage to reach out and just try to talk to somebody, because
definitely,
you never know what you could get out of it. And networking happens every day, whether you think about it or not. If you meet somebody new or talk to one of your friends, you never know where that friend is going to end up. You never know who you're talking to. You could be talking to a millionaire, but they may not look like it. Mm-hmm. So just see every opportunity as networking. And I think that will help remove some of the fear from the process itself.
And like what's the saying? It's not what you know, it's who you know. And that definitely applies a lot of the times. Just, find the right person who can push your resume along or just give you that right advice or direct direction for what you're trying to do can go a long way.
Exactly. Mentioning those things, what would you say is one misconception someone may have about your role?
Misconception of the role, I would probably say that so there is a lot of traveling, right? But a lot of it, so people think I'm living this glamorous life, I'm traveling. A lot of the times, you're going to these small, remote cities, which is most of the time, actually. Yeah, I do get to go to the New Yorks and the LAs and the Miamis. I live in South Florida already, but a lot of times I'm going to these small little cities. Sometimes they have one hotel, I have to stay in another city next to it, or there's really not really good restaurants. So traveling is not as glamorous. So that's a misconception. People think, oh, wow, I wish I could do that. But once you really tell them what it involves, like, okay, it's not as glamorous as it, so that would be a misconception of it. Another misconception I would say is, I think I mentioned it before, is that it does take time to kind of get into the application specialist role, where you really need to have a strong foundation first. I've talked to people who kind of, as soon as they're done school, they want to do this. Because this really is a good job for someone who's young or someone who's older, because of the traveling demands. If you have a family, that can be kind of hard on your children or your spouse, significant other. So some people kind of want to do it early on, but it really requires you to kind of get a few years, 3 to 5 years of experience in whatever field you're working in before you kind of jump into this type of role.
Yeah, I could easily see that. I know for me, coming out of even graduate school, I was looking into roles similar to yours and trying to figure out, what was out there and what all is required of them. And the more that I learned about these roles, the more I really realized that having that work experience prior to will make it so much easier for you. Even if you're just a killer interviewer, you go in, you crush that interview, you get the job. I promise you, when you start on day one, it will not be easy.
When you talk to your first customer, whether that's IT, laboratory, or whatever, and they start mumbling or bumbling all these terms that they expect you to know, and you're like, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, let me refer to my supervisor, and then I'll come back to you. Yeah. So I totally get that. So we're almost done here, but I want to ask you, a couple more questions. The one thing I wanted to ask in particular is, do you have any key pieces of advice that you would give somebody who is trying to pursue a role like yours, or even wants to follow in your footsteps?
Mm-hmm. I would say, first of all, find, the area that you really, really enjoy. So I keep saying, whether that's a science field, and just don't be small-minded when you think about the field. For science, there's research. So if you're a person that wants to go into academia and do research, go that route. Or if you like the diagnostic area, find out what you need to do to go into that area. Or if it's computer science, IT, really get a foundation of understanding what it takes to do that first, and then move on to the application part. Other advice I would give, for me, when I was younger, I had a lot of I didn't have a lot of self-confidence. So I would just say, believe in yourself. If you put your mind to do anything, you definitely can do it. Sometimes it requires a lot of work, sacrifice, a lot of studying, a lot of reading. But I truly believe now that whatever you want to do, you definitely can do it. So don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it or it's too hard. Just 100% believe that you definitely can do whatever you put your mind to. And don't let your circumstance or your environment influence you or try to make you feel like you can't do it. You definitely can. Yeah. And that I needed to hear for myself growing up. So I just want to make sure that whoever's listening to this hears that.
For sure. Yeah. If you guys are out there and you're worried, about what life has for you, just know that it's okay. It's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to, live in the moment and see what happens and what is going to be presented to you. But ultimately, you have to remember that life is in your hands. So you need to be the one to go out there and make that decision. And you need to be the one to really grab the bull by the horns and tailor where your life's going to go. But as you said, life's going to throw you punches. So just be ready for those.
And for me, also, I'm thinking now, when I was younger, I felt like that I had to have everything planned out. I had to, finish grad school by a certain period of time. And I had all these milestone plans in my head, which is fine. But it's okay to, for me, I'm going back to grad school again now in my mid-30s. It took me a while to figure out exactly, what direction that I really want to go to. So it's okay to, finish school, of course, but have a plan, have a direction, but it doesn't have to necessarily be right now. You can take your time, work in an area to figure out if you really, really enjoy that area, and then make changes. It's okay to go to school a little later for grad school or change careers, but I feel like sometimes people rush themselves through something, then they find out that's not what I really wanted to do. So really take the time to really understand the area that you're interested in and learn it well, and then if you want to continue on that path, by all means, do it.
Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, I just wanted to, give you the kudos yourself for recognizing the things that didn't work for you and that you weren't passionate about, and having the courage to say, this isn't for me, and go a different route. Because a lot of the times people start school or start a job and they quickly realize that it's not going to be for them, and there's no chance that will work out. But they feel like they're stuck now that they've started. But that's not the case. You have the freedom to just do as you feel is best for you. So I want to give you the props for that, because that takes a lot for somebody to do.
Appreciate it.
Of course. So with that, I want to thank you for coming on. I really appreciate, you sharing your journey and really just being vulnerable with these youths and showing them what it's like in a typical day for you. And I know they're going to get a lot out of this, and I know they're going to be excited to, investigate the invisible world that is microbiology.
Yes.
and maybe become, a mini you one day. But to that, we will see. Do you have any last minute thoughts or shout outs that you want to give? Thank the moms, anything like that?
Yeah, like I said, I grew up in a single parent home. My mom has always been my biggest supporter and motivator to this day. She called me right before I got to call her back, actually. But like I said, the biggest thing for me is just, I always tell people, just believe in yourself and no one else will. You can do anything you put your mind to. That's what my mother always told me. And I live by that every day.
Those are great words. Wise words from a wise man, everybody. So now at this point, I'm going to look to the camera as I always do and tell you guys, you already know the drill. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of these professional stories, and you can hear about all of the opportunities that are available to you. Let me know in the comments, if you like my tie, if you like Mr. Smith's hair, let us know. Drop us a comment or two, and especially let us know if there's any careers out there that you want to hear about. I personally will get on LinkedIn and try to reach out to people and try to get them onto the platform so that you can get the information in an easily digestible manner and something that feels familiar to you from, faces that look like yours. So with that, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Black Professionals Project. And we're going to thank Mr. Rustin again, and we are out.